Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So this is part 1 of the chapter on infectious diseases in humans. For pure biology students, this is chapter 11, but for students taking science biology, this is actually chapter 8 of the textbook. In this video, I will be covering these two portions. Okay, I will be introducing to you what a general infectious disease is, and then I will be talking about the different modes of transmission for infectious disease. Let's go through the objectives from the syllabus in the O levels. Okay, candidates must state that infectious disease can be spread from one person to another, whereas for non-infectious disease, right, they cannot be spread from one person to another. Okay, you must also learn how to identify examples of each. You must also explain that infectious disease are caused by pathogens, two in particular, bacteria and viruses, and they can be spread from person to person through three ways: bodily fluids, food, and water. So let's begin, okay? But before we go into infectious disease, let's talk about the general definition for what a disease is. So a disease, right, is a condition that causes a body or one of the parts of the body to not function normally or less effectively. Okay, and it is not due to a physical injury. So let's say you sprain your arm or you have a cut, right? It is not really considered a disease. A disease organisms, right, will commonly exhibit signs and symptoms. Okay, so please take note of these two terms. What is considered a sign? A sign is something that can be observed or measured, okay, such as rashes, coughing, and vomiting. Now, these three examples that I highlight to you, you can actually see them, you can actually hear them, okay, you can actually, in a way, measure them, right? So, this is considered a sign, okay? Now, what is a symptom? A symptom, right, on the other hand, is a subjective description of feeling, okay? Three examples: headache, fatigue, and nausea. So these three examples, right, you know that they happen, but you do not know how intense it is. Correct? You can have a very bad headache or you can have a very slight headache. So it is not really considered a sign because they cannot really be measured. So let's move on to infectious and non-infectious diseases. Okay? Infectious diseases are also known as transmissible diseases. They can be spread from one person to another, and they are caused by pathogens. Okay, and there are two that you must remember from the syllabus: bacteria and viruses. Examples are known, I think you should know them: influenza, HIV or AIDS, bacterial infections. Pneumococcal is in the syllabus, so I'll be introducing to you in the later videos, right, what pneumococcal diseases are. Non-infectious diseases are also known as non-transmissible, means literally they cannot be transmitted from person to person, okay, cannot be spread. It is not caused by pathogens, all right? So just remember that non-infectious disease are not caused by bacteria and viruses. They are caused by other factors, for example, genetics, malnutrition, lifestyle, and pollution. Okay, some examples are, for example, obesity, liver failure or liver cirrhosis, coronary heart diseases, diabetes, and one more, sickle cell anemia, which I will cover on later in the chapter on molecular genetics. Okay, or inheritance. Sickle cell anemia is an inheritable disease. Inheritable means they can move from one generation to another, but they are not considered transmissible. Okay, so let's move on to part 2, which is transmission modes. Okay, so how are infectious diseases transmitted? There are three general ways. So number one is through airborne transmission, which is through droplets in the air. Okay, we can also call them airborne transmission. Number two is through direct contact, such as exchanging of bodily fluids. Okay, and number three is through contamination of food and water, or what we call food or waterborne diseases. Okay, so these are the three major modes of transmission. I will elaborate them in the next few slides. So let's start with the first one, okay? Airborne transmission. Now the keyword here is the word droplets. So it is not vapor, okay? So number one, right, you need to know the difference, or rather when you write, you have to be very clear, as in like you cannot use the word vapor because it's not really a gas thing. Pathogens, right, requires droplets to be transmitted, okay? So this is quite confusing for some of you maybe, but please take note. So they are tiny respiratory droplets, okay, and they are expelled when a person talks, sneeze, or cough. All right. These droplets, of course, will contain may contain the pathogen, and they may be transmitted to another individual when the individual inhale. Okay, so it goes straight into the respiratory system. The transmission, right, is dependent on two factors. The first one is the size of droplets, and the second one is the proximity of individuals. All right, so let me give you an example over here, okay? Now the Ebola virus, right, over here, you can see, right, that they are transmitted through droplets, but the distance, right, is actually lower. On the other hand, right, measles, which is caused by a virus, okay, you can see, right, that their transmission distance is actually further because the droplets are smaller. All right, so please take note of these two factors. Now, number two, right, is through direct contact, such as exchanging of bodily fluids. For this particular slide, right, I would like to elaborate a little bit more. Now, it is there are many types of bodily fluids. So when you write in your answer, right, you have to be clear, and you cannot use. I will advise you not to use bodily fluids. Okay, so I have shown in this video what are the different types of bodily fluids, which I'll highlight to you now. Number one is through saliva. When individuals kiss, or when there is saliva exchange, um, diseases can be transmitted, of course. Okay, so some examples are through flu, hepatitis, and even tooth decay. Okay, so be careful. Number two is through the bodily fluids during sexual intercourse. All right, semen, which is from the male, or vaginal fluids, which is from the female, when they are being exchanged, right, from individual to individual, the person can be infected. Okay, and this is a very unique. There is a very unique term for this, and we call them sexually transmitted infection, or STI. The one that is in syllabus for you guys is of course that is caused by HIV. Okay, so this will be elaborated later on in the chapter on reproduction. The third one, right, is through mucous membranes or blood. So some examples given, right, is conjunctivitis, chickenpox, or hand foot mouth disease. So you might have a blister on your skin, and when the blister bursts, right, and the fluid in the blisters get transmitted to the next individual, maybe through the eyes or through the mouth or through the nose, or even through the blood or tissue fluid, you can inherit, or rather not inherit, you can get the you can get contacted with the disease. Okay, and lastly, right, this is a very specific one. When a baby receives milk from the mother through breastfeeding, right, the baby might also receive the pathogens from the mother. Okay, if the pathogens are small enough. And this is actually quite true. You can get AIDS, you can get hepatitis, or you can even get another STI known as syphilis. The third one is by contamination of food or water, okay, or what we call food or waterborne diseases. This doesn't really happen in Singapore most of the time, but I believe if you read widely around the world, because of improper sanitation, diseases can spread. Okay, so it occurs when food and water are not properly stored or not properly handled. Examples are cholera, typhoid fever, E. coli infections. E. coli infections can occur actually pretty frequently, even in Singapore. When you have food poisoning, right, you have diarrhea, it's probably caused by E. coli infections. Okay, E. coli is a bacteria, by the way. And the last one is salmonellosis. You can Google it, but generally these are known as food or waterborne diseases. So of course, right, if you were to practice proper hygiene in your workplace, or on your own self, okay, you can decrease the chances of contacting these diseases. From a organization point of view, if you have proper water treatment or proper sewage treatment, you can also decrease the chances of them being transmitted in a population. Okay, so that's it. This is part one for the chapter. So infectious disease versus non-infectious disease. Number two, the difference between a sign and a symptom. And number three, what are the three modes of transmission and how to elaborate on them. Okay, so if you have any questions, please ask. And that's it. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.